and we just like pick products that we think that will work, but it was like more of a spray and pray.
I've been to hell and back to get all this knowledge, and I'm trying to hand it over to you for free because I want to help someone. And
now I can tell that story and be like, okay, I'm not going to get into too much trouble for that.
All right, welcome to the $1 Million Sellers Podcast. Today we have Sean Chow on the call. Thanks for coming on, Sean. It's always good to see you, man. How you doing today?
Cheers, Nick. Really excited to be here. I'm good, man. How you been?
Doing good, man. Staying busy with the family, and work stuff is crazy right now, and just trying to keep it all moving the right direction. But life is good, man. Life is good. We're excited to have you on. I know we've been talking about getting you on this call for a while now, and we finally made it happen. And I know you got a lot of great things going on in business. You guys, are close. I think you said getting to your 8-figure. You guys are working towards getting to 8 figures, right?
Yeah, it's trending that way this year. Our run rate definitely is looking like that's going to happen. But fingers crossed, that's what
nice
will happen this year.
All right, and then and you said your trailing 12-month revenue. You guys are about $8 million in revenue.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice. All right, good stuff, man. And I know you were talking to me about how proud you were of just like being able to take off some time from work and take a long vacation. I know we got to spend some time in Japan together recently, and I'm excited to dig into that stuff and really help people understand what it takes to kind of create that position in your life, right? It's not like you got lucky or it just happened. Like there's a lot of decisions you made along the way to be able to put yourself in that position, and I'm sure the listeners would love to learn those things. But for now, man, just like start to tell us a little bit about you and how you got into Amazon, and let's dive into that story a little bit.
Cool, man. So I mean, before I was in the Amazon world, I was in university, and I was working as a bartender in high-end cocktail bars in Australia. And like I was a regular on the cocktail competition circuit and that side of the industry. And, as an Australian, we grow up in a culture that kinds of places a big emphasis on traveling. So, and experiencing the world. So that was like a big thing. Like when I was like in college, I wanted to do that. But the cycle that I had was more like work, earn some money, go travel, and come back with nothing. And I did that a couple times, but then coming back with nothing, it was just like a little bit frustrating for me. So I wanted to figure out a way that I could just do that and go and travel and do my backpacker thing, and then come back with like the same or even more. And I didn't know how to make that happen. That was the question that I was kind of wanting to solve at that point in time, because coming back broke and needing to pay for uni textbooks and whatever, that was like not a good feeling. And yeah, at the time, like my brother, he had a best friend, and they were living in Cebu, Philippines together. And his friend was like selling on Amazon, and he said that, he's making pretty decent money online. So I saw that as like one of the options that I could take going down that path of figuring out how to have a remote income. And this was back in 2015.
Okay.
When I graduated university, I pretty much I already earmarked that as kind of what I was going to do, and be like, okay, I saved up a bit of money. I was working bars, but I had kind of achieved what I wanted to achieve in that world. And so I was like just saving up money because I knew I probably needed some cash to start up. And my plan was to go to Cebu and try and convince this guy to teach me all his ways and teach me the way of the online money-making world.
Okay.
So then I moved there to Cebu, Philippines, and eventually it took a while. Like we ended up becoming drinking buddies, and he was friends with my brother, but it took a while, but we ended up starting a business together, and he took me on and agreed to teach me everything. We kind of made this agreement where he would put up the capital and I'd just do all the work. And in exchange, he pretty much taught me everything, especially to get started. I didn't have a lot of money, so I was at his house like Monday to Friday, and his wife would feed me chicken it was good. But it ended up like that venture that we had together didn't really end up working out that well.
Okay.
But the experience that I got, I ended up learning like the skills to do my own thing. And like he and I were still good friends to this day, and we keep in contact and talk regularly.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's how I got started.
Awesome, man. I just love that story. It's like, you know, it reminds me of like when I first started, but just like just like reflecting on where you were like in that time in your life, and like, you know, how awesome it is. And, you know, I'm sure there's like so many things to learn from those moments of just like, you know, taking risks, trying to work on something different. You know, you're working with a partner, you know, someone, you know, your brother's friend. And, you know, I'm sure there's just so much to take away from that. Like, what were some of the things you guys went through early on in that relationship? Like, what would you do differently? What are some things you do the same?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, like, I would say that there was a lot of luck involved. I mean, there was all that stuff like risk and making good decisions, but I would say all these different things fell into place, and it was like really lucky.
Yeah.
But I guess like at that time, I didn't really like value like him as a partner and a mentor and that kind of thing. So I think the way that our business relationship was, I kind of had this like chip on my shoulder that I wanted to do it myself. And
Okay.
even though we kind of worked together, I was kind of like on the side doing my own thing, trying to figure it out on my own as well. So, I mean, I think in hindsight, if I had knew the value of like being able to use someone else's capital to grow and grow big, and someone that at the time would have had, let's say, enough capital to grow and scale it up much faster than me using my own internal kind of generation of money from my profits. I think if I knew the value of that at the time, I would have like put more effort into growing our thing together.
Okay.
And maybe it could have grown a lot faster and been a lot further ahead if I did that, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, like when you first get into it, man, it's like, I know I was in a different state of mind, you know, like I looked at things differently. I think I had the chip on my shoulder too. I wanted to do things myself, and I didn't really value the experience of other people, I guess, because I didn't really have any myself, right? Like I didn't have anything to measure it against. But now it's like when someone asks to, you know, to help sell on Amazon, or you know, they want to know more. I mean, like, how many people have you tried to help sell on Amazon?
I mean, in the earlier days, quite a few, because I was like, oh, I want to help people. Like, you know, this is really cool. Like, you guys can do it too. And then I guess nowadays it's like I've seen so many people go down that path when I try to help them, and it just ends up like not working out. So nowadays I keep kind of quiet in my own personal circle about like what we do, and so I don't really take on any of that, like those kinds of requests these days.
Yeah. It was always disappointing when I would like put a lot of energy and effort in towards helping someone, and they kind of really wouldn't follow up with it or follow through. And it's like, man, you know, I've been to hell and back to get all this knowledge, and I'm trying to hand it over to you for free because I want to help someone. And, you know, they just typically didn't take advantage of it. So what kind of like tactics did you guys take advantage of back then? Is there anything you're still doing that you learned from back then, or have you completely shifted the way that you guys are operating?
Yeah, I mean, of course, back then, 2015, 2016, we could still do giveaways in exchange for free reviews, and it was like for free, or like pay the platform that connected you $1 for that. I didn't really know the value of that. If I knew what I know now, and I went back then, I would have just like bought thousands of reviews, and instead of like trying to be cheap about it. But I guess back then, and even like more recently, let's say like 2.5 years ago, like we've still operated on a more of a spray and pray approach. Like for us, like we have a great design team, and we kind of trust their product development process, how they design the products and everything. So we'd just be like, okay, we've gone through our process. We think this is a good market to jump into. and we just like pick products that we think that will work, but it was like more of a spray and pray. Whereas now I think the trend is going towards, and I'm sure like a few other guests would talk about this, especially on like the some of the other calls in MDS that I've heard, more being very intentional about how we choose products and develop them, to the point where we want to validate the products before we even put a deposit down on a PO. So we want to use all the tools available to us for like market simulation and polling and all that kind of stuff to validate our products as much as possible before we even put down a deposit on the first purchase order. And through that approach, like the spray and pray approach, we would just be like comfortable with products that would sell a few days, up to like 50 to 100 a day. That would be fine. But now, like when we go through a product validation process and wanting to win all those kinds of battles early on, it takes a long time. It's really like time consuming and it's a lot of effort. So we want to make sure that like all that effort is worthwhile. So we could kind of go after products that are a little bit higher value to us these days. But the turnaround process for product development is much longer.
Yeah, I have a lot to learn when it comes to like product development. Like I came from a reselling background. It took me a while to learn a lot of the things that we do now in the private label business. But like one thing we've really changed is the hiring process. That's what I'm going through right now. We're doing 3 interviews with 3 different executives, including myself. We've got the scorecard. You know, like we've really changed the way we do it. And I think it's similar to the product. It's like if you just wing it and throw up a product and you've put all this money and energy and resources into it and it doesn't work out, it's like, man, I wish I would have put that effort in up front. And that's kind of how we, you know, someone said that to me with hiring, and I was like, yeah, I really need to change the way that I do that. What are some like tips you would give out as far as like the product discovery process? I know some guys get pretty intense with, you know, multiple rounds of polls, they're hiding prices, then they're showing prices and stuff like that. Like what are some best practices you guys go through?
I would say like being really strict with the like the success parameters that you're choosing. So for example, like if you have a poll and there's like 5 items, like in a 5-horse race or something, what's the percentage you want to dominate, or how far determines like your decision of, oh, this is a good product. And so for us, it's like 50%, but then we had a product recently which we're developing, and we're going through that initial polling process, and it was getting like 45%, and each iteration was like 47%, 43%. And then my team were pushing me and were like, oh, I don't think we can, you know, change this too much. I think we've maxed out on our potential on this product. And I said, well, then just keep trying something. It will be something random, and just keep looking into why people are making their decisions. And it took like a good few weeks, but they eventually ended up with an option that started winning all the polls 60% of the time. Like so 60% compared to like 45%. And now there's never any guarantee that you're going to succeed once you go through like purchase order and launch, but I feel like when we can validate it early on, like that definitely puts us in the box seat of doing pretty well. And I've learned that from different MDS members that I've met. It's definitely not my own kind of process. It's just like that whole knowledge sharing of the community has been pretty valuable.
Yeah, it's such a great place to like get ideas and really, I think like we're learning from other people, but then I think there's this cool element that we all bring to the table, is that we're like iterating on what's already there, and we're like, you know, kind of pushing the boundaries of you know, something that someone else created, but now we're stacking on top of it, and then we're sharing that with the community, and we're all building on top of each other. And that's one of my favorite things about the group is there's just so much good information out there, and the like we're all like these really big risk takers. So like we'll take an idea and try something new with it, and if it works, we share it with the community, and even if it doesn't work, you know, some people share it, and that's good information too, to know what's not working out there as well.
Totally.
So what type of stuff do you guys get into, once you get the inventory over, to the States and you send it into Amazon? Like what does your process look like when you guys are launching?
I mean, like similar to how we develop products, like how we do that is very similar to like our philosophy on the space is changed a lot over time, like rather moving away from too much manipulative tactics and being more like making sure that our product is awesome, and then like all the images, the secondary images, our A+ content is really on point and hitting all the keynotes that we can to maximize our potential in the market, and really moving towards like the philosophy of it being a click-through rate game, a conversion rate game. And then you don't need so many manipulative tactics for things to work. It's just like the natural momentum can take you away. Like now we recently launched a product that went through that whole product validation process. And then within like a week, we were like going up at the top of kind of all the relevant keywords that we were kind of looking at. And we didn't do any like manipulative stuff. It was just more like, maybe we pushed a few things on socials, but it really wasn't like that much, and it didn't get that much traction. But then on the platform, I think via the effectiveness of like the click-through rate and how good the hero image was, it did most of the work for you. So I would say like for normal people getting into Amazon these days, it's like super hard. But if you can like figure out all these things and how to maximize those variables like click-through rate and conversion rate for your product, it makes it like a lot easier.
Nice. Yeah, that's definitely some good advice, man. And I see a lot of conversation around, those metrics these days. And it's interesting to see how things have changed. I mean, just like you mentioned, going from all these manipulative kind of tactics that we've moved away from and focusing on these metrics now. Like, I don't even really hear a lot about all those manipulative tactics anymore. And I'm sure they're still going on, but that stuff seems to have been really pushed underground, and Amazon's done a pretty good job of kind of combating some of those things.
Totally.
It's always like they're always there, like it's always going to be there as those people figure out new ways to work around the system, but Amazon's right behind them, making it difficult. So it's refreshing to be able to, I think it's refreshing to be able to focus on metrics like click-through rate and conversion rate and really just try to run, a good business, have a good product, run the polls like you mentioned, just to try and do a good job, instead of just focusing on the hacks. And that stuff lasts, it's evergreen, so to say. Like it's just a better thing to focus on. So do you guys just do the main image when you're doing a lot of your polling and conversion rate optimization, or are you guys polling and putting a lot of time into the other images as well?
Yeah, at first it was about the hero image, but then now we're moving into like the secondary images, like how do we optimize those? Because once they get on the page, like how do we convert them? So yeah, we're just starting and digging deep into that. So we haven't got too much data on how effective we've been because we haven't had our first kind of run through of that. But so I definitely think it's super important.
Okay. And then are you guys using IntelliV or PickFu or another tool?
Yeah, IntelliV has been really big for us. Like the way that they are able to simulate the like a marketplace situation has been really key. And I haven't used PickFu, but IntelliV has been the key one for us. Okay,
cool. I was someone in the group yesterday mentioned Dimitri's tool. Have you checked that one out yet?
I'm not sure. What was it called again?
It was Dimitri Verona's tool. He was talking about it at one of the recent events. Let me see here.
For split testing or the search query optimization?
It does the search query optimization, but then I think he added something new to it that does the split testing. It's called Jungle Ace.
Oh,
Jungle
yeah.
Ace is
We
the name of this
are,
tool.
we're playing around with it at the moment. It's
Okay.
it's pretty cool. Yeah. It's almost intimidating. Not the split testing side of things. We haven't tested that, but we have been going through the search query performance report kind of tool that they have, and it's this big monolithic file that's a little bit intimidating to look at, but once you know how to kind of like dig into what's showing, it's kind of interesting and pretty powerful data that you can use for like optimizing your product and kind of getting the most that you can out of what you got.
Yeah, I'm trying to get better at those search query performance reports and like the mashups of all the data. I messed around with Mansour's from Incrementum Digital. I played around with his tool a little bit, and I think I'm gonna play around with this Jungle Ace tool. But really, what I've been doing is just taking a look at the top search term report and the search query performance report, and just trying to get an idea of like, you know, what the top 3 guys are doing, what their click-through rate and conversion rate looks like, and then identifying where we're at and just trying to beat them. So that's what we're doing now, but trying to find some better software solutions just to make it a little more user-friendly. And then are you guys doing anything with like customer acquisition cost or customer lifetime value? Like I see a few people talking about that stuff in the group as well.
Yeah, we don't really our lifetime value and like repeat customer rates are not super high. Like we're not in replenishables or vitamins or anything like that. So it's more like our strategy is how do we add incrementally add more products that create like a bigger and bigger baseline of our performance.
Okay, cool. Right on, man. And like, what does your day-to-day look like right now? What type of stuff are you working on in the business?
At the moment, like, I'm more like the integrator side of the company. So I like put things together and build the systems that we kind of use that all the team work on. So like I'm definitely digging into the search query performance and training people and like that whole conversion rate optimization side of things. So a lot of my day to day is mostly spent training. And with the ideal scenario being like eventually I don't need to be there and for whatever it is we're working on, and that's mostly like my day to day. And
I always find myself bouncing between operations and marketing, and like I really just want to do marketing stuff. I think marketing stuff just fits me better. It kind of like I don't have to stay on top of things. Like, you know, it's kind of just me out there doing my own thing, you know, like having ideas, testing them, seeing how it all plays out. On the operations side, there's like so many more people involved, you know, and I got to make sure everyone's staying up on the things they have to do and stuff like that. So it's a little not the best personality fit for that stuff. I love training people. I love doing that. I'm working with a guy we just hired in Africa, so I meet with him every day at 8 a.m. and get him trained before he wraps up his day at 9 a.m. So that's been fun. That's what I've been doing recently.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for us, training is like a big thing. I mean, even though like this doesn't have to be even new stuff, just like a regular cadence of like training your team on even just refreshers on certain concepts and topics and then why, like getting to the core reason of like why we're doing something, so that, you know, in the case of different tactics or things, softwares or whatever, like change, like if they know the core foundations and frameworks about why things happen, like they can make decisions without you. Like that's essentially what why I find it so important to have like a regular cadence of.
And I think it helps with the company culture as well. Like that's something I think a lot of us struggle with. It's hard to build a culture when you're working virtually. You know, like how do you stay in touch with people daily? How do you check in with them? And how do you do it in a way that's not seen as like annoying, you know, like someone just micromanaging me? Like that's something we're kind of finding our way through now. But I like the idea of having like a regular cadence to training. to help with that company culture. That seems like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
What other type of team stuff are you guys doing? Like, do you guys have, are you guys doing level 10 meetings, running EOS, stuff like that?
Yeah, we've been running on an EOS system since like 2018. So like pretty early on. It's been a few years. It's been pretty helpful because our team is fully remote. Like we got, for me, I'm based in Thailand most of the time, and I split my time between Thailand, Australia, and Japan. And then the rest of the team is kind of elsewhere. They're either in Thailand, we have some in Pakistan, Canada, and Philippines. So like, it's definitely important to think about what we're doing for like our team kind of dynamic and culture. So like we do things like, so to do that, like level 10s and those kinds of meetings weekly have been mostly like a good way to keep a touch base with everyone and keep that kind of like culture and dynamic with the team where they're all feeling like they're part of something and not just like a virtual worker. We really want to not label them as like VAs or something, but really like just part of a team. We also, since last year, we've been doing annual retreats. Our team is not that big. We have like 10 people. Nice. So it's kind of easier to kind of fly everyone out from everywhere to like someplace. Like last year, because we just can't come out of the pandemic, we did it in Bangkok, which is like close to like just the next city over from where I live. And everyone was kind of in Southeast Asia at the time, so we flew them all into Bangkok. And this year we're doing it in Vietnam. So that as well, like giving them a bit of a reward for all the hard work that they do. But I can only speak to like when your team's kind of small at that like level that we're at. Like I'm not sure how you would do it when you have like 10 plus, like 50 plus team members, how it would work. But like we found that has kept our team pretty close and trusted. And I think that definitely helps with the motivation and incentive to do their best.
Okay, nice. And it seems like it's been working for you, man. I know you mentioned you took some time off, got to travel for a good chunk of time, and you were able to rely on your team pretty heavily during that time. Like, why don't you tell us a little bit about that experience and some of the things you think allowed that to work out the way that it did?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's like the training, making sure that your regular cadence and you're focusing on the right things that to bring them in and train them on the things that you want them to focus on and what identify to them what's important when you're running a company or running the business, whatever you're getting them to work on. And then next is probably the incentive structure, making sure that whatever work agreement you have them on or contract, there's an incentive for them to do their best and like beyond just like a nominal percentage increased every year. Like, is there some reason for them to be working harder and getting down to the core reason for them why they would want to work hard? What's the motivation? And in order for us to kind of get a gauge of that, is we hold regular expectations meetings with the staff so that we kind of like understand what like they're expecting from us as employers or what they're looking for to that's really motivating them. That comes through in like our interview process, but we also do that like regularly every quarter. And
nice.
It's also a good chance for us to communicate to them that there's a if they're either meeting our expectations or there's something that is not meeting our expectations, and that way we can communicate to them because most of the time they just don't know. So being able to communicate why they're not meeting expectations prevents frustration. So like, and frustrations just equals expectations minus reality. So if we can get between that gap and make them understand what is the expectations, they can either rise to meet it or they'll understand why we might be getting frustrated. And then, other than that, just like handing over, giving them the responsibility to do it. But in the case where I was able to take a couple months off, I was just checking in once a week to make sure that I was just looking at like key indicators that we kind of measure how everything's going. I'd have a meeting once a week for like 30 minutes, and that was the kind of way I'll just check in and everything was going okay. And if they needed any kind of feedback on something, then I'd be there to kind of like help. But most of all, I was like kind of away, and it's just being able to hand over that responsibility was really nice. And I think for us though, we were really lucky. We brought in, we didn't just hire from outside someone that came in and straight away did an amazing job. It was like we had someone earmarked for like 2 years who we had been training and bringing her through and having her be like look over the shoulder when we're in like leadership meetings and then training, all that stuff. And then eventually getting some work experience with a little bit of hand holding, and then me looking over the shoulder at the work that they were doing. And so it wasn't just like, oh, you're hired, do your best. We had earmarked her for a year and a half, 2 years prior, and we had been working towards building the skill set to have her take over. And then like taking the leap, especially for someone that built the business themselves, like just taking the leap to hand over responsibility, and that was a big thing too. So that those factors were all really important, I think, in being able to let go of the handle, the steering wheel for a bit.
Nice. And so when you guys had earmarked that employee to fill that role, did you have it in mind, like, you know, the test is going to be me taking this big chunk of time off, or did it just kind of play out that way?
I mean, 6 months prior, that was like kind of our experiment. We're like, okay, I'm going to take this time off, do your best. Like, so when this time happens where I'm not going to really like handhold you and you don't have me as your safety net anymore, just your job is to, do what I do and grow the company and take the actions, make sure things don't like burn, and put out the fires, and then also grow the company. And so that one, it wasn't something that we started with when we interviewed her, but she was just more like someone very motivated to grow and very focused on career growth and trajectory. Mm-hmm. Combine that motivation and drive with actually having the intellect and critical thinking ability to understand information and decision making. Like those kinds of things put together were a really good combination. So when I saw that and she was really motivated, we kept like moving her forward, and she kept like doing well. So we just like kept going towards that point where I was like, okay, maybe she could actually do my job for me. And we worked towards that because she eventually just wants to keep rising. So
nice. Awesome, man. Do you have any do you have any advice on like incentive plans, like anything you tried that didn't work or anything you tried that worked really well?
Good question. I would say, first of all, like everyone is different in terms of what they would be incentivized by. So like having your regular meetings with your key people and getting an understanding of what motivates them and what are the incentives for them. If it's like monetary, like obviously there's things you can do, bonus structures that you can put into place based on performance. You can do, or sometimes it's like lifestyle based. We have a few single moms on our team, and it's more about being able to be there for their children when they need them to be there, and having the flexibility to say, hey, I need to step out for a second and not be micromanaged. That is like another incentive. I think it's just more like getting into why people get motivated. But yeah, obviously some sort of commission-based structure and knowing what are the benchmarks to hit to unlock whatever commission it is, and making sure that it kind of makes sense financially for you. Like for us, I guess this incentive structure needs to make sense financially. If they hit a certain target, it benefits the business. So like the incremental benefit can pay for whatever commission they get rewarded with, as long as it makes sense numbers wise. That's the key.
Okay. And are you guys checking in? Like, do you guys typically do weekly incentives or monthly? How are you guys tracking those?
It's like either semi-annually or annually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've had this idea, like I always draw on this experience I had in sales, and we were selling like $15,000 plus vacation packages, and man, those guys celebrated bonuses every single day. You would come in there and they started it would be like 8 a.m. in there, and it was like you walked into the club, man. I mean, they got the music like pumping. There's like 20 people in the room, like guys are dancing, and then they had the like a hallway in between the two sets of chairs, and they would just celebrate everyone, and they'd like walk up the hallway, everybody's like clapping, and they're like passing out money to them and stuff like that. And I always like had this idea in my head, like, how can I create that environment in my online business where like people are just so motivated and like excited to come into work and make some extra money and just, be really hyped up about it.
Damn, I would
haven't
say
made
that
it
that's
happen
like,
yet, but
I would say for me, that's like not a strength of mine, but like my wife who works in the business, she's really empathetic and wants to make sure like everyone's celebrated. And so like I've outsourced that kind of thing, but I definitely would say that it's nowhere near as like where I would want it to be, and definitely celebrating your team is super important. And I definitely think with our company, we definitely could do it better.
Yeah, it just seems like such a great way to just offload some work, man. Like if you can get the right people in there, get them focused on the right things, you can really hopefully let your hands off the wheel a little bit and go do whatever it is that you want to do. So what is some of the stuff that you guys are working on now? Like what's some of the goals you guys have? What's the rest of the year look like for you and the company?
So I've always built this, like all our kind of growth goals are more like lifestyle based. Because when I started the company, I wanted it to be a lifestyle company where I could like build the business around like the way that I wanted to live. And so my goal is like being able to still travel and do that whole thing while building a team and growing a successful business. And I split my time between 3 bases, like 6 to 7 months in Thailand, a couple months in Australia, and a few months in Japan, and then business trips here and there. So my challenge and my motivation is how do I keep that lifestyle and elevate it while still being able to enjoy the process of improving your business, improving yourself, and all that good stuff. So yeah, like I think the big challenge, and I'm still working on it, we had an experiment, like I mentioned before, about putting someone in the seat and me taking a bit of time off for the first time since basically it started, and like that went pretty well. So I think like moving more towards that direction where like you can do less and less and still have the business that can still grow without you. Like how do you do that? That's the challenge that kind of excites me, and that's what we've been working on.
Okay. What are some of the things that you've really leaned on to help you with that? Is there what have you leaned on in the past, and what are you leaning on now as a resource to help you navigate that?
Good question. I mean, I would say like cliche, but like having a multitude of mentors, in our everyday life, like having any kind of challenging decision that gets put forward to you, like having someone there to kind of talk to and that's been there, maybe it's like 10, 15 years ahead of you in the game, whatever it is. Like just being able to talk to them and give you additional availability of information so that you can put their kind of feedback into your kind of mental processing and how you make a decision. Kind of paints the picture a bit more, makes things a little bit more clear, gives you more context, and might give you some additional information that you might otherwise have been blind to. Like, I think being able to make good decisions, like that's a really key component of that. Like having someone that can point out your blind spots and alert you to them. And I guess like self-awareness as well, understanding yourself and your strengths and weaknesses. That's been pretty key, and having people in your life or your team that balance out those kinds of your weaknesses, so that you can build like a stable base to whatever you're trying to grow.
What are some things you've had to change within yourself, to help get you closer to, these goals that you've talked about?
I think as you bring more and more people, I think the way that you communicate, I think that is something that I've had to learn to be very conscious of, especially like for me, who's someone that I want to be the person that sets a standard and drives performance. And sometimes my delivery of whatever I'm communicating to achieve that goal has been blunt and sharp-tongued, and often comes off, and different people receive things different ways. So learning how to understand how to communicate to people while still delivering the message in the best way that they can receive it. I think that's been something that has been challenging for me, and I've been working on for a few years, and learning how to communicate that and still drive excellence without like being too, I guess soft's not the right word, but like without still setting the standard, but learning how to communicate, not hurt feelings, and not be that jerk that's like driving it with negative incentive. More like, how do you talk to people and get them to move in the direction you want them to, and how to communicate better. I think that was a big one for me, because like systems, operations, that kind of stuff has come naturally for me, but the whole communication, working with other people, that I think has been something I've developed over the last few years.
Yeah, I've been that's such a good point. I think that's like such a hard thing in life in general, right? Like, how do I communicate in my relationship better? How do I be a leader to my kids? Like, how do I have a difficult conversation with my best friend? Like it's such a hard thing to do, man. And I think in my opinion, like what you were touching on, it's like accountability is like, how do I get people to be accountable for what they said they would do, or, what their job is, without coming across in a very negative manner, but still making it clear that like, hey, like you're here to do something and I need you to do it. And, we got to maintain that accountability.
Yeah.
So hard. It's so hard. And then it's like we can try to, and then sometimes people make me feel bad. It's like I try to approach the situation in like a nice way. I'm like trying extra hard, and maybe I slip up and maybe I do say something wrong, or maybe I don't, and like somehow I end up feeling like the bad guy. So yeah, it's
Totally.
like such a tough thing to navigate, man.
I think the challenge for me is in those situations, most of the time I would try to look at it like a learning opportunity. How do I communicate better? If someone's not getting it, or someone's not doing like what you want them to do, or what you think you want them to do, like this is a learning opportunity on how do I approach it differently. If my current method is not working, how do I do it? Is there a way that I haven't tried? And then balancing that kind of mindset with standards and like how many chances do you give a person before you make the call that it's not working out? Or I haven't had to do it too many times. Like most people like rise to the occasion, especially if you, like you mentioned about the hiring process, especially if you've done your a lot of the good work up front. Like good people rise especially when they're told what's kind of wrong. And that's the whole thing of like expectations, where if people don't know what you're expecting, you got to fill the gap in there somehow. And once they know what you're expecting, they can rise to meet that. But yeah, so that's the challenging thing, where balancing, looking at things like a learning opportunity versus like driving standards and putting the foot down when things are just like not up to, not acceptable.
Yeah. It's tough, man. And I think one thing I've learned recently through hiring and dealing with people is like, you have some people like myself and probably like a lot of people in the group. It's like we can really rise to the occasion when things are tough, like when we're kind of backed into a corner. And I used to always try to hire people like that. And then I realized if there's no pressure, they won't do anything. Like they're just kind of like laid back and they're not doing things. They're not creating that pressure for themselves. And I think that's one thing I got good at eventually, was learning how to create pressure on myself to perform well instead of, wait until something bad happened or something like that, to snap into action.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like when I started my business, a lot of my motivation came from like a negative source. Like I started it and I was like telling my dad, I kind of had this idea, I think it could work. And his first reaction, knee-jerk reaction was, oh, that'll never work. So a lot of it, and you're going to fail if you try this. So a lot of my motivation was like proving him wrong. But then like, at some point I was like, after like a few years of like doing it, and there was like some consistency to doing like okay, like in this kind of business model, kind of lost that drive, that negative driver, because wasn't about proving him wrong anymore. It was like, oh, okay, I proved them wrong, but like I don't have anything driving me forward. So I had to really figure out, like, navigate through that lull in my motivation and try and figure out like how to get motivated from a positive source. But definitely negative forces are much more motivating, I would say.
It can be.
Yeah.
What's that old saying? It's like, they said it to me in a sales class. It was like, if you were asleep and there was $50 in the driveway, would you wake up and get it? And I was like, no. And they were like, well, if your car was on fire, would you wake up and go put it out? And it's like, yeah, like I would. It was the hope for gain versus hope for loss. That's what they were trying to teach. That or fear of loss, hope for gain versus fear of loss, and how that fear of loss is a much more motivating factor for people. And I think this is kind of similar. It's like, like you said, you had a chip on your shoulder. For me, it was like, I didn't want to go to college and I didn't want to be told what to do, and I wanted to be in control of my own time. And, that motivated me for a long time. And then it became about, the lifestyle business. Do you ever find yourself kind of, what's the best word? Like, you get too wrapped up in the business and the performance, and you kind of lose sight of, hey, the reason why I did this was, so I could enjoy life and live it on my own terms. Do you ever find yourself getting caught between those two?
I mean, I guess anyone that's like in our world at times experiences that, because they get like caught up in the flow of something, and it takes you in one direction, and then it just puts other pillars of your life out of balance. And I guess if you have like good people around you, and you're the type of person to kind of be open to listening, that hopefully you see the signs before it goes too far. But for sure, I think like, especially with work, where like for the last 5 years, work has been like a major priority in my life to continue grow. And it's been an outlet as well. It's like someone that's always been like self-development, growth mindset kind of focused. Like this business has been kind of an outlet to scratch that itch. So obviously wanting to do better and do more kind of has at times put the balance in the wrong direction, or too far in one direction. But I don't think I've ever, I mean, I would say I'm decent at identifying the times when the warning signs are there, and knowing, okay, kind of step back and reassess what's really important in life, and what are you actually doing this for?
Right on, man. Yeah, it's always important to remember that, and it it kind of brings the question to mind, like what would 2015 Sean say to 2023 Sean now? Like reflecting on the journey you've been on.
Yeah, I think about this question a bit actually, because 2015 Sean was like single, and all he wanted to do was like live in like backpack and go in hostels and stuff like that, and just be like, enjoy life. But I think if that guy was kind of like looking at me now, he'd be like, damn, it's not bad. Like,
Nice.
So it's like good to kind of like go step into that kind of state and actually like have some gratitude for kind of like the luck that you've been lucky enough to receive, and the blessings that you kind of got. Yeah.
Nice, man. Well, I mean, it sounds like you've been on a heck of a journey. I mean, hitting 8 million in revenue. You guys are, feel like you're going to make it to 8 figures here soon. Like that's amazing, man. Is there any advice you would give, to anyone listening that's kind of going through a similar journey as you?
I guess like doing whatever it takes to get in the right room, like be surrounded by the right people.
Nice.
I wanted to tell this story because I think enough water has gone under the bridge, and I've like been in the space long enough that I feel like I've earned my stripes. But when I joined MDS, it was like 2000 and I forget what it was, 2017. Back then, all we needed to do was send Ian some screenshots of your sales. So, but actually I was like at 500K, and I kind of spliced together a couple of my friends' accounts to get to that 1 million mark. And I was like, because my main motivation was like, I know if I get in this room, I'm sure by osmosis, something's going to change. And we were at like 7 figures within like 6 months. And then,
wow.
I think, now I can tell that story and be like, okay, I'm not going to get into too much trouble for that.
Yeah.
Now, back then, that's all we had to do. Now the process of onboarding into the group is a lot more strict and a lot more like harsh to get there. But so I don't think I would pass that at this time. But like the lesson is more just like doing whatever you need to do to get in the room and get the right information and learn how to make good decisions, and all those things done over a long period of time consistently. Like that stuff compounds, like knowledge compounds, cash compounds, all that kind of stuff. And as long as you're persistent, give yourself a long enough timeline. That's what I would say.
I think that's great advice, man. Right. Yeah, that's really good advice. Like it's one of those things you don't know until you know, right? Like, and if you haven't had 2 different groups of like close friends, you just won't know like how much your circle can impact you in a negative way or a positive way. In MDS, like every time I come to an event, man, I'm like, it's the best motivator. Like I'll be motivated, motivation usually kind of comes and goes, but like the motivation I leave an event with lasts like a whole month. I'm like fired up in a way that I only get from being around those people. And the other great thing is we're also doing stuff that we love. And I think in general, what I love about the group is we love our work too. Like it's a part of our personal life. It's not just, hey, this is what I do for a few hours a day. It's like, no, this is a part of who I am, and allows me to be the best version of myself.
Totally.
Yeah. So I think that's what I love about being surrounded by those people.
Yeah. A lot of like some of my really good friends have come out of the group, and I'm super grateful for it.
Well, Sean, thanks for coming on, man. It's always good to chat with you. I look forward to our next adventure, wherever in the world that may be, and I'm sure I'll see you again here at an MDS event. But thanks for your time, man. I appreciate you coming on.
No, thanks, Nick. Really appreciate it. It was fun.
You got it.